It's very, very clear now to see that we have circular marks that have been exposed by the drought that look to be probably Bronze, Iron Age type enclosures, burial grounds.
And do you ever get grief from anyone telling you got the weather wrong?
Oh, I get lots of grief, lots of grief. With AI and with all of the modern science that we have, we're going to really quickly get to a place where we're going to be able to really accurately help forecast floods.
Alan O'Reilly, creator of Carlow Weather, enormously popular service online here in Ireland, joins me. Alan, a brief glance at the App Store shows among the free weather apps that we download, you've got apps like Meteo Blue, Éireann, Weather and Radar, YR, AccuWeather, Windy, and an awful lot of other people just use the default weather app that comes on their phone. So in Ireland, that is two phone systems. That is iPhone and it is Samsung's, two brands. And both of their apps are called Weather. But when you open them, you will often see a different forecast to the one that Éireann gives. Sometimes it's only slightly different. Sometimes it's significantly different. I spoke to Éireann about this and I asked them during the week. They told me that their app, that they have measured their app as being more accurate than many of the other apps because they measure every hour and they measure in 2 kilometre zones as opposed to every 6 hours and in 9 kilometre zones, which some of the other services do. Are they right? Can you talk me through that?
They're 100% correct for the next 48 hours. So their weather app and their weather website uses the Harmony model, which is the best model for Ireland. It goes out to 60 hours, but generally it's 6 hours old by the time you kind of get the data. So really it goes out to every 56 hours. But by the time it updates...
Why is it the best model?
It's so that resolution. So what they're talking about is, if you think about, I suppose, SD, HD, 4K, some of the weather models run at SD, some run at
Standard
HD.
definition. High
definition.
And
And this basically is the size of the squares over a map of Ireland. If you think about that, what they're saying is theirs goes down to 2 kilometres. So every square is 2 kilometres. It means that within 2 kilometres, they're differentiating rainfall, temperature, etc. So you can really drill into. So if you're having planning something for tomorrow in Ireland, you can go in, you can look at their app, but you can also look at the maps that are on their app, and you can drill down and you can see a temperature which is for exactly that location. And the same for rainfall. So their weather app is by far the most accurate because it uses the most accurate weather model for the next 2 days, pretty much.
And they do it every hour as well, as opposed to some of the others say that they measure every 6 hours, like 4 times a day.
Yeah, so some of the apps will only give you every 3 hours or 6 hours. As you say, theirs does good. But theirs only gives every hour really for, again, the next 2 days.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, so I'm talking about, I'm not talking about planning a party in 5 days' time. I'm talking about, will I have to wear a raincoat later today?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because to me, the weather model is useful for that, but the radar is actually more useful for that in terms of making a decision in the very short term. Because if you look at the radar, you can see a band of showers, say, for example, generally in Ireland, moving west to east. Obviously, it can happen the other way around. And you can see how quickly it's moving, how heavy it is it breaking up? But you're right, their weather app is short for that. But the only problem I find with it is Éireann don't differentiate. You're now going from the Harmony model to the ECMWF, which is the next model that you use. So you go, hour by hour. And then, say, for example, it's a bank holiday weekend coming up. You want to know what it's going to be like for the whole bank holiday. Well, once you go beyond Sunday evening now, you're now into them using the ECMWF, which is a much lower resolution and a shorter update cycle. So you're not realizing that you're going from less accurate or from more accurate to less accurate. In terms
if I'm looking at their app now, you're talking about Harmony, ECMWF. This is all kind of jargon to a lot of people, but these are different measurement models, right?
These are different computer models, so different models that run on supercomputers. And very often I talk about the Ryder Cup of weather models because you have the GFS, which is the American model, and then you have the ECMWF, which is the European model. And they were kind of traditionally they were the two models that most services either used. But we've got a lot more models now, and especially these local high-resolution weather models, because another high-resolution weather model, which I think would give Harmonie a good run for its money, is the French Arome model. It's a high-resolution weather model. The only problem is if you live in the northwest of Ireland, it doesn't cover the very far ends of Donegal.
Why not?
So they break it into a region, and the supercomputer runs for a region, and that region stretches to most of Ireland, but it just misses the tip of the northwest of Ireland.
So it just looked at the tip of Donegal and said, "Nah."
I don't know. I'd imagine
nobody
when the decision was made, someone hasn't been to Guiador and said we need to cover it here. But yeah, so the Arome weather model is another high resolution weather model.
And what does it take to create a model, like a French model, a European model, an American model? I mean, are these people who are accessing satellites? Are they building computer systems to crunch data that's available from some other atmospheric sensors? Like, what is a model?
So exactly all of that. So the weather model takes in all of the details that they know about the weather before that model starts its run, before it starts. So it takes all the satellite data, all the data from airplanes, from ships, from weather stations. Yeah, airplanes. And that was a big thing during COVID, that a lot of that data was missing. And people like me that follow the weather models on discussion forums and that, we were wondering how were the weather models going to handle the fact that they were missing all of the data. Because you think about planes fly across the Atlantic, and they fly at different levels. They're recording live data of, really interesting and really useful weather data. And the same with all the ships that are out to sea. So all of that, along with obviously the EU Metsat, like the new satellites are also massively helping. So this is evolving and it's improving. But all of that weather data gets fed into a start point. And the weather model basically says, right, this is the atmosphere as we see it. This is where the low is. This is where the high is, etc. And then it has an algorithm, physics, that basically says, right, how can we predict what's going to happen with that? And, like when we had the very fine spell of high pressure, it's pretty easy. There's a big high pressure. It's going to sit here for another week. The weather forecast is pretty simple. But now we have a low pressure system trying to move up from the southwest, and the weather models are really struggling. And this week actually is a great example of how all these weather models start with the same data, but end up with slightly different output. And even within the one weather model, there's a thing called ensembles, which is where the ECMWF, for example, the European weather model, starts off with a starting point, and it changes the details a little bit. And then you see all these lines I share on my social media, which is a scatter. And the tighter those lines are, basically, the more agreement there is that this is what's going to happen.
But why are they disagreeing, though? Is that just, in layman's terms, the people who created these models applying different maths and different algorithms, different assumptions?
Yeah.
And why do they have different assumptions?
It's an interesting one in terms of the physics around it and trying to see where these supercomputers, because obviously back in the day, people were drawing these by hand. And now supercomputers are doing this, constantly and really aggressively. So I can't tell you exactly why they differ, but obviously the algorithm is slightly different.
Well, yeah, so that's what I'm really getting at, because I think a lot of people would have thought, okay, we're now 100 plus years more into weather prediction. We're decades and decades into high-tech weather prediction. Surely there's a standard formula using science and sensors that we all kind of agree on. But what we're talking about now is, applying algorithms to computers to interpret that information, and someone somewhere is setting the algorithm, is tweaking the algorithm. So someone somewhere is applying a set of judgments very, very subtly to how the weather should be predicted.
Well, a lot of it is also, it's based on historical weather information. So we would often say, for example, the weather models struggle in certain setups in Ireland. You would hear people say that. And people say to me, how can a weather model struggle? So if you think about, if we don't very often get a really cold spell from the northeast or the east like we got in 2010 or 2018. So the weather model hasn't learned what happens in these scenarios a lot. So in Ireland, we get the westerlies, we get the southwesterlies. It's pretty much able to predict those very well because it's learning. So we talk about AI learning.
Sorry, just so I'm understanding this. So in other words, it's taking what happened in previous years, under similar circumstances. And it's saying, well, that happened then under these circumstances. So therefore, if it repeats itself, this will happen now.
To a certain degree. It's
Okay.
applying physics and learnings. So it's kind of going...
I didn't know that.
If a low pressure system is coming from here, we know that this is how it interacts with the Atlantic generally, based on, and obviously based on a lot of different parameters. But what's interesting is you talk about the algorithm, the butterfly effect. People talk about the butterfly effect. That is very much in play with weather models, because one small little change at the starting point can end up with a completely different output. So that's why one
when
weather
you say
model...
a small change, because when I think of butterfly effect, I think of a butterfly flapping its wings and, a typhoon happening on the other side of the world. When you say butterfly effect, just so we're,
I mean, is that
context here.
For example, there's only so many weather data points. So if you, for example, the weather model has predicted that the low pressure is going to be 966 hectopascals when it's over the M3 buoy, and it comes over and it's actually 970. It's out by 4 hectopascals. That can have a butterfly effect in terms of, the weather model has miscalculated that. Right. And now it's got the real live data, and that impact is going to change. But it can also happen in terms of the algorithm, in terms of the starting point of the data is slightly different. And that's what happens with all these ensembles. The data is twisted or changed a little bit in terms of what's fed into it. And what you get out the other side is massively different.
Yeah. It's really kind of interesting. So predicting the weather is quite hard then. I remember I had a lot of sympathy for Éireann earlier in the year when there was an issue where one of the government ministers, I think it was James Brown, criticised them for what he said. He kind of said it was a local radio interview, so he might have been talking off the cuff. But
I know the one you're talking about.
Do you remember this one where he said this was during? I think it was a storm Chandra. There was a storm in January, and there was a flooding issue, and James Brown, minister, went on local radio, and maybe he was just in conversation, but he basically said that Éireann had withheld flood risk information. He was saying it's not good enough, and they should have made more judgment calls. And it led to this huge, big sort of confrontation, and they had to have meetings. But I thought that was very unfair.
Oh, it's a tricky one. Yeah. So I actually agree with the minister.
Do you?
Okay. I do. And I heard that interview because I think that was Damien Tiernan, WLR. Yeah. Maybe it was Alan at South East Radio.
Damien, yeah.
Yeah, but basically what he was referring to is there's a flood forecasting team, which is a completely separate team now in Éireann. They've been there for a number of years, okay? So you have the weather forecasting team and you have a flood forecasting team. And they have been producing forecasts, but they only shared with the local authorities. They don't share it with the public. Now, I've raised this a few times over the last year or two because I spend a lot of time talking about flooding and the fact that we're not prepared for flooding and we're going to see more of it. And the answer that I was given by Éireann was that it's basically not for public consumption and that it's given to local authorities and other state agencies. However, I've spoken to people in local authorities who have told me in confidence that they would much rather it was shared publicly.
Why?
Because they feel that the onus has been put on the local authorities now to share a flood forecast. And they believe the public expect the forecast to come from Éireann, not the local authority.
Okay.
So there's two issues here. One is how you communicate it, which is the issue that the second issue is the data and how good it is. Like, for example, I got a copy of one of these flood forecasts and I shared it. And what's also interesting, Adrian, is I made an FOI request and I got given one of these. So under FOI, there was no problem releasing it. Obviously too late, not useful at that stage. So the public has a right to this information, but does have a right to this information in a timely manner that it can help. One of the things, though, is the quality of that. And I don't mean the quality of what the product, I mean the information that they have is not ready yet. So they don't have enough data points for how much rainfall is recorded and what the impact is going to be on river levels. But they're saying in recent interviews, they've said that it could take up to 10 years for that to be ready. But my point, and I think to be fair to the minister, his point was, if there's data there, it may not be perfect, but let the public have access to it and let them decide. If you're living in Enniscorthy by the River Slaney and there's a flood warning that's gone out to Wexford County Council, I'd love to see that and make my own judgment and then listen to the authorities and say, okay, well, they're saying it's low risk. I'm looking at this going, it shows me that there is a risk there's going to be flooding, I take action based on that.
Interesting. How did that end up? Are they still only sharing that information with local councils?
We're going into another autumn-winter season where they're still only going to be sharing it with the local authorities. And a flood forecast that's produced in HQ in Éireann alongside the weather forecasters is not going to be made public, is my understanding.
And I wonder then what, maybe I've been unfair in saying that I thought that James Brown was being unfair, maybe being unfair on that minister, but I'm not aware that the James Brown or the government has moved to request that Med Éireann publish those flood reports.
I'm not entirely sure either. I know that there was meetings after that, and I know that they were looking at it. It's the same with the other issue that was raised was the county by county weather warnings, that they only break it down county by county. Obviously, from the second smallest county in Carlow, we get weather warnings specific to Carlow. But if you look at Cork, they get a weather warning for the whole of Cork. And when we saw Storm Babette, it was an orange warning for the whole of Cork, but East Cork got absolutely decimated with flooding. It should have been a red warning. So they're also saying they're going to start looking at that, and they're going to start looking at the impact-based system that the UK Met Office use for weather warning. So to be fair, I think they're evolving. I think they are listening. But yeah, the flood forecast one, and that's where the weather models and AI, actually, maybe to touch on AI, that's where AI is going to really start to play a part here, because we need to start using that type of technology to look at if 50 millimetres of rain falls on the catchment area for the River Slaney, it's already at 2.04 metres. What is it going to rise by? What is the flooding risk? And I think with AI and with all of the modern science that we have, we're going to really quickly get to a place where we're going to be able to really accurately help forecast floods.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on your overall listening experience. It only takes a minute, and your feedback helps us improve what we do. When you take part, you'll also be in with a chance to win a €500 One for All voucher. Visit mypodcastfeedback.com and enter your code TECH, that's TECH. Thank you for helping us shape the future of what we do.
Was there any knock-on effect from the Americans? I think, did the Americans partly defund the weather services over there? Have we seen any deterioration in that?
Yeah, unfortunately, Donald Trump cut a lot of funding to NOAA, which, you know, a lot of that is climate study. It's not necessarily weather study. Some of it is weather, and the weather forecast will probably suffer a bit from that. But a lot of it is into climate research, which, you know, obviously is another very important part of it. And sometimes people mix up weather and climate, you know, and think they're almost the one thing, but they're not. And we really need that climate research to help with the likes of the flooding. So if we know the atmosphere is warming by X, we know that that can hold more moisture. So we need that type of studies and that type of information. So it's very, very disappointing to see a huge reduction in the amount of funding to NOAA, and that will have an impact in the years ahead in terms of the weather information and the weather predictions that are coming.
You were talking about something on one of your social channels, that the dry weather around where you live, around Carlow, seems to be revealing something fairly extraordinary.
Yeah, so this happened in 2018. If you remember, we had a really dry spell in 2018 as well, and people started noticing some crop marks almost on the ground, and mainly because people had drones, you know, were able to easily take photography from. So I in 2018, I went down the road and I took some pictures, and I thought I spotted something, and I reported it actually in 2022 after I read a magazine about some other local hill forts and things in this area. And I went back and looked at the pictures from 2018, and I thought I could see a circle in the land. So because we've been so dry, soil moisture deficit is nearly 90 millimetres in Carlow. I went and I put the drone up again, and it's very, very clear now to see that we have circular marks that have been exposed by the drought that look to be probably Bronze Iron Age type enclosures, burial grounds. So, you know, the modern drone that I have now was able to capture it. And actually, I did a video that I shared on my social media.
Yeah, I saw it.
It's very identifiable. I mean, you don't have to. I didn't tweak with, you know, the settings or any of the brightness or levels, contrast levels, or anything. That is exactly as the drone saw it, and it's very obvious.
I wonder what happens now though with that, because if that is of archaeological interest, like somebody owns that field, it's probably a farmer, right? So what happens? We now see that there are these potentially very interesting archaeological sites in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Does the farmer just wait for the rain and hope the grass grows over and nobody notices?
Well, I reported it again to the National Monument Service because I spoke to Owen Sullivan, who's the Carlow Heritage Officer, who was very helpful and advised me to report it again, and he will follow up. And the quality of the pictures now I've given them, and I've given them the GPS coordinates. It's unlikely to be excavated. It's not that likely. But what is likely is that it could be added to the National Monuments list, and it could become a recognised site. So it could actually become part of the National Monument list of sites that are known to be of archaeological value. So hopefully that will happen, because it does look very interesting. It's very near to a local dolmen as well, and a local river. So, and that site had a monastery, and it had a lot of other things hundreds of years, thousands of years ago. So it's a very rich area of archaeology, but it's less than 2 kilometers from my home. So I was very interested.
But if the farmer were to put cattle in that field, I don't know what happens in that field. But if the farmer puts cattle, they could trample the marks out. Well,
no, because the marks are well underground. So it's really more because of the drainage. So you could dig down 10 feet and you won't actually find anything, because it's more how the drainage, because it's mostly rocks. It's like, for my own back garden, I live rural, I have a percolation area for my septic tank. And the areas where there's lines in mine, which somebody might think, there's an archaeological site there, but it's drainage. Because it's very obvious. So, you're not going to see anything, and by putting animals on it or harvesting more crops, it's not going to change what's under the ground.
So one or two last points. I mean, congratulations on Carlow Weather, for example. I've watched it grow over the years. It's kind of amazing. What's your footprint like now?
I think I've over 800,000 followers across the different platforms.
I mean, it's kind of amazing. How did you get into that? I'm not sure if I've ever asked you this before.
Love snow. I love snow, and I want to try and forecast snow in my own back garden. So I got a weather station, and I set up a website, because I've always worked in tech. I work for Black Knight now, and the website updates every 60 seconds from my back garden. I have a few webcams facing different directions and things. So it was really the marriage of weather and tech that kind of got me into it.
And did you ever consider like a formal career in meteorology, or did you train in it?
No, it's all self-taught over the last 20-something years. And no, I liked IT as well. I'm lucky I have a great job in Black Knight, and I like that as well. So I'd rather keep it a hobby. It can be a busy hobby when you get something like Storm Éireann or snow or whatever, but I can kind of pick it up and do as little or as much of it as I want, really. And
do you ever get grief from anyone telling you got the weather wrong?
I get lots of grief, lots of grief. Generally not so much about the weather, more to do with conspiracy theories, to be honest with you.
Conspiracy theories?
Yeah, so the spraying in the sky and the chemtrails, and why aren't I talking about that? And am I paid by the government to cover it up like everybody else? And that kind of stuff.
So the chemtrails, spraying in the sky. What are the other good weather conspiracies?
Yeah, they're the main two, really. Is that like we can't have nice things because they control the weather?
Are there a lot of people who believe in that? I mean, I used to see more of it than I do now. And there was a kind of a Venn diagram overlap there between those guys and the ones who thought that 5G was reprogramming your brain. And then there's another Venn diagram overlap between vaccines. But I shouldn't have even said that word because that's going to get me in trouble. But are there a lot of people who believe in that chemtrail stuff?
There is, and you're right. There's that kind of, people are into every conspiracy theory, but there's actually, with the weather, sadly, there's a lot of people that don't believe in any other conspiracy theories, but believe in this one. Wow. And I've had messages from followers who have partners, husbands, wives that have fallen down the rabbit hole of chemtrails, and they're asking me how can I help them, because the problem is if you go searching, you will find all sorts of material online. And with most conspiracy theories, there's a grain of truth somewhere that it started from. So a lot of people mix chemtrails up with basically cloud seeding. So cloud seeding is something that happens obviously in different countries.
And cloud seeding is where you're trying to create moisture for a dry, arid area, for example, to encourage rain.
Or they use it in the US to try and negate large hail as well, actually, to try and prevent large hail and crop damage.
So it is true to say that there is man-made activity that changes some things that we see in the sky.
Oh,
Yeah.
geoengineering is 100% real. Cloud
Yeah.
seeding is 100% real. It's not happening in Ireland. The UK government announced that they're going to start some small trials, which all of these people jumped on and said, oh, they've admitted it's real. But the number one thing is all of those things combined have nothing to do with contrails that come out of the back of a plane.
Yeah.
But they confuse them with what they call chemtrails and spraying.
And what they think is when they look up in the sky and they see like a flat line of blue on a lovely sunny day, they'll see a couple of white flat lines way up in the sky. And they're jetliners from Germany and from Turkey. And they're crossing over Ireland to get to the States mainly.
Yeah.
And they think, what do they think that those trails are?
They think that that's spray coming out of chemical spray that's being used to manipulate our weather.
To manipulate the weather. So, okay, to manipulate the weather. I have heard variations of that along the lines of they're trying to affect the air quality to like one crazy one to make us more passive.
Yeah, there's all sorts of theories as to what they're doing, but a lot of it is that basically when you start off with a sunny day and then clouds develop, they say the clouds are there because the planes are spraying the sky. And that they don't want us to have sunshine. Because some of the weather, like some of the projects that they are looking at from geoengineering is to try and dim the sky, to dim the impact of climate change. So there are small scale. So they're taking that theory in those small and they're applying it to every plane that flies over Ireland.
Got it. Okay. And you and I are clearly both in on it because we're because we're not exposing the truth there. Anyway,
there is one thing I would add just before is that AI is going to change all of these weather apps. It's going to change all the weather forecasting dramatically over the next few years, and in a good way. So an AI weather version of the ECMWF is using 1,000 times less power and delivering the forecast much, much, much quicker.
Wow. And that's significant because when I asked Éireann about like why choose 2 kilometer grid zone as opposed to others who have 9 kilometers, but why couldn't you do a 1.5 kilometer zone or a 1 kilometer or a 500 meter zone? They said 2 things. First, they upgraded it from 2.5 kilometers to 2 kilometers 2 years ago. So it is more accurate than 2 years ago. But also they said it was actually a matter of resources and as in the amount of compute and the cost to actually running that and including energy.
Yeah, so AI will allow weather models to do far more, far quicker and a lot less power. So what I'd love to see is that Harmony weather model cover all of Europe and be produced every hour and not have a big impact on resources.
Okay, well anyway, absolutely fascinating talking to you about this, Alan. Thanks so much for joining us. Alan O'Reilly, creator of Carlow Weather Service on various social platforms. Rory Bones was on sound today. D Reddy produced this episode. JJ Clark is the series producer. And I'm Adrian Weckler. You've been listening to or watching The Big Tech Show. And we'll talk to you soon. You've been listening to The Big Tech Show with Adrian Weckler, sponsored by Deal. Deal's not just another payroll platform. It's one your team might actually enjoy. HR, IT, and payroll together, finally. Visit DEEL.com/bigtech.